welcome in a New Year's 2025 edition of the Horse Racing Happy Hour. This is Louie hanging out with you today. Friend of the show, Steve Kornacki, alongside as well. We'll be going through our Eclipse ballots, which are due, I think, in 58 minutes. And so we'll get into that with Steve in just a minute here. Wanted to do a quick shout out to a couple of different people, but we are presented today by our friends at Amwager. Get over there, amwager.com. They've still got the $150 sign-up bonus going on. So if you are interested in that, get over there, dollar for dollar match up to $150 into your account if you are a new user. Amwager.com. Go check them out. For sure, and our friend Steve Kornacki, he's in New York. He's got a Merrimack College shirt on again. Seems to be a theme on this show, which means I probably owe you a sweatshirt from the show, so you don't have to dress the Merrimack stuff every time you come on. How are you, Steve?
Yeah, this is my admission that I don't own too many clothes, I guess.
Oh, brother, it's like this, and then I have like one hoodie from where I went to college, and that's what I wear. Like, I'm just a very simple, like the dad thing I think happens to all of us, Steve. Yeah. I actually don't know. Did you go to Merrimack, or is it just it happens to be where you grew up?
I didn't. No, I just grew up nearby, and it has the added luxury of fitting and feeling pretty good. So
there you go. The old ice hockey capital of the world that is Merrimack College. So there you go. Here on the horse. That's right. Here you go. Well, Steve Kornacki with us. Steve and I have something in common, and this is about the only thing we have in common, is that we were in the same class of the National Turf Riders. And if you are wondering, there are three groups that vote on the Eclipse Awards every year. The National Turf Riders, that Steve and I are members of, people that work at DRF, and then folks associated with the NTRA. So we fall into that first third that I just talked about. And Steve, you've been doing this for a couple of years. Does it get any easier? I felt like there were a couple categories this year that took me way too long to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, you're really at the mercy of what the different classes look like, how decimated they are, how many injuries there are. And I think, we'll get to it. I mean, there's some categories out there, I think, where really, if you could give incomplete the award, you might.
Some of them a little easier than others. Let's start with one of the easiest ones, and her name is Torpedo Anna. Let's just start with her. She's going to win 3-year-old filly. We get to horse of the year, though, Steve, and we'll just rip the Band-Aid off of this episode and go ahead straight at it. Are you willing to give someone whose wins more than not were against other 3-year-olds outside of that distaff win? And is it something like a distaff win that pushes her over the top?
I am, and I don't have really any hesitation about it. I think it's a couple factors. Obviously, it's the dominance she had in her class. It's the dominance she had among 3-year-old fillies, but also the ability to go against the boys and come as close as you can to pulling off, not just a win, but a win in one of the marquee races. The 3-year-olds, the Travers. It's something about the that no one on the male side, I think, really stepped up to grab it. Can get into that. And I think it is just when you're talking about horse of the year, I think you've talked about this, we've talked about in the past. I think that the award is bigger than the individual parts. It's sort of a sum of the whole. And I think what Torpedo Anna represented to the sport this year was bigger than anybody else.
Yeah, it's not just buyer figures or something like that, right? It is really what she represented the sport. I don't know if you got to watch last week, and actually I did it on the Spotlight show. A friend of the show, Matthew DeSantis, who's with Naira Betts and different things, and he talked about the totality of the award. Really, this this desire to put up a horse that had the very best year as far as sorry, Steve. There we go. As far as what Kenny McPeek did with her as far as making her available at Saratoga, at Clark Day at Churchill Downs, we were able to watch her parade. And, I was, even as fans, you could have been about 5-10 feet from her and she was just hanging out. And I got to tell the story last week, Steve. One of my favorite things about it was every time she got near the chute, the passageway to go out to the track, she would stop and she was like, "It's time to run. Let's go." She was just ready. She's not in training. They're actually trying to give her time off and she was just ready to go. And it's hard not to like her. She puts in an honest effort every time. And a guy like Kenny McPeek, just a normal dude from Kentucky. It's just a great story.
Yeah, no. And I was listening last week. I love that story. I love that you had the opportunity, to see that. And I think that's, again, it's part of, when we get to Trainer, I think we can get into this a little bit too. But I think the way he constructed the campaign and the way he put her out there, I think, again, just made her, elevated her that much.
Yeah, and look, I don't mind going straight to trainer. I don't think there's an order that we have to follow here, but if we're both comfortable with Torpedo as horse of the year, if you did give it to someone else, Steve, who else ended up in your horse of the year before we do make the full move to trainer? Who did you have in second and third place there? Because I do think, I do something a little different. I always include the best 2-year-old of the year. See, Immersive got my third place vote, but I ended up going with Sierra Leone second just because I thought hit the board in every single one of his races. They were always high-end races. Wins the classic. I don't fractions and different things and blah blah blah. I talked to owner Brooke Smith yesterday. That'll be on the Kentucky Race Spotlight tomorrow, and he mentioned even that there were some criticisms of his year, and I'm like, we're not doing that here. By the way, Steve, I got to ask, when this comes in the mail to your house, do you geek out like I do? You got to. I mean, come on, right?
That is one of the coolest pieces of mail you get all year, right? We get every October, right? Every other year, you get the voter's guide, just for whatever the election happens to be. This is the fun one to get, though.
What do you think? Who was your second place vote in the horse of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the unorthodox approach you do of going with the 2-year-olds there at all, but I landed in the same place you did for second. It was okay. Sierra Leone, and I think it was just this discussion you're hearing a lot of, about Sierra Leone versus fierceness, and how do you net that one out, and yeah, I mean, it was the classic win, and the consistency, and then ultimately, I think just the Derby. Again, just these races aren't all created equal, and on the stage that big, coming that close to winning, just showing up and being part of that photo. Yeah, I think overall, it's interesting though when you think about Sierra Leone. I mean, going into the Breeders' Cup, obviously we were all talking about fierceness. Can he? He's finally got it figured out. He's got it turned around. Can he just kind of finish it off here and maybe even there was some talk give Torpedo in a run for horse of the year. If I think people had given up on Sierra Leone, as consistent as he was. I think the idea that he was going to win one of these races, it was like, okay, he's gonna come running late. It's gonna be too late. He's gonna finish third. Maybe he's gonna have some issue running straight in the stretch again that kept happening. So I think we kind of look at it now, at least I caught myself doing this, saying, oh yeah, just consistent, always there. But I think my opinion of this horse really took a significant jump up after that classic, in a way that fierceness first or second in that race. I kind of still view fierceness the same way, but I was my view of Sierra Leone was not that great coming into it.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I was talking with Brooke about him, and we saw this twice now, right? Where Sierra Leone just didn't like Saratoga, right? And so sometimes we think of it as the graveyard of champions and all this kind of favorites or whatever, where even American Pharaoh doesn't win, these kinds of things, right? And so to see Sierra Leone do that 3 times at Saratoga this year, it always is like this, Steve. We always say we're not going to hold the Derby against horses, and then we do. And then, like we did with fierceness this year, seriously. And then, we're not going to hold those high-level grade ones against horses. And then we do it. We definitely did it with both fierceness and Sierra Leone this year.
And it's just, in fierceness too, we were in that, is the boom or bust horse, shows up one race and can't in the next. But yeah, with Sierra Leone, it was just that style. I think it's so hard to be the deep closer, and you just get the sense that this is just, that there's something there that's going to keep the horse from breaking. And who knows, maybe we're going to see Sierra Leone going forward and he's never going to win again. We're gonna keep seeing this. Maybe he just picked the right day and it was the right track and the right circumstances. But at the end of the year, that win with everything else makes it look like a pretty complete package.
Now, obviously, with the election and everything else with your gig, you were not at the Breeders' Cup. I know I saw you at Preakness. Were you at you were at the Derby this year? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been very vocal about this. If you listen to this show, you're tired of hearing about it. I have good news. It's the new year. I'll talk about new things. Derby 150 is the greatest horse race I've ever attended. I don't think it's even, I don't know how there would be a debate in my mind. I've seen great performances, but never a better race than that. The crowd, everything. Steve, what was it? What's at stake in Derby 150, that kind of stuff. Did you have a favorite race that you attended this year?
Yeah, mine is in the Derby one it's great. I will tell you, like, my perspective on it, just given how it all unfolded, was a little unfortunate because we got a set for NBC that's sort of inside, right near the betting windows. Like Eddie Olczyk will be there, Matt Bernier will be there, and we basically finish up like 10 minutes before the race. And I used to have someone there who could who knew a place we could go watch it outside, and it was like, well, we can't get that this year, so we all just stayed at the set where you got a small TV, where we would just watch the rest of the program from. The entire floor is empty. It was like COVID all over again. Everybody's out there watching, and we're watching it just on the little monitor here, and you're hearing the crowd, but I didn't get the full. I was there, but I didn't get the full experience. Yep. That magical.
Can I guess what yours is? Can I guess?
Yeah, I think but yeah, go.
I think it's the Preakness because you're such a fan of Wayne Lucas, and I thought. Just a reminder that doing it the right way is still the right way, right? Horse wins the Pat Day Mile. They bring him back in 2 weeks. He's totally fine. Goes on to win the Pennsylvania Derby later on. The job they did with Seize the Gray this year is pretty remarkable.
This is anybody who's watching. I don't know if this comes across, but this is the picture I got on my phone, and that is Seize the Gray crossing the finish line with the Preakness. I'm in the far back.
You're in the picture. There you go.
I want to get this thing framed. This is like the pic. It's the Lucas story too, isn't it? I mean, 88 years old. This is, the horse is 8-1, 9-1. I'd seen him break his maiden at Saratoga the summer before, and I had this nagging thought. There were 2 Lucas horses in the race. Just Steel was the other one. I am a huge Lucas fan. I actually thought, Just Steel, might actually be a pretty good setup for him. Sure. But I had this nagging feeling they're going into the gate. And I'm remembering that Seize the Gray maiden race from Saratoga where it had been pouring rain. It was like a muddy track. It was just like the Preakness. And, Seize the Gray just went to the front and just stayed. And it's exactly what happened in the Preakness. And there it was. And I'm kicking myself after, but long after they turned for home, Seize the Gray's ahead. I was not going to win any money in this race. That was long gone. And I've never screamed my head off like I have in the stretch of a race. And it was to me, that was magical. Then turn around and you look up kind of in the balcony, and there's Wayne Lucas, and he's got his cane, and he's going to work his way down the step. This is fantastic.
I just love the Preakness. We do, Road to Pimlico shows on this show, every year, and it's just covering races there is just such a delight going to Baltimore, and to have that horse, and Steve, if you followed me, you would have had the exacta, but but no, it was. The one time I got to tell Dan Illman, hey, I knew what was going to happen in a race. And then he was like, Sierra Leone's going to be really good in the Classic. And I was like, I don't know if Sierra Leone can win the Classic here. It's a short stretch at Del Mar. And it's like, Illman gets the last lap. But that's what happens on the Horse Racing Happy Hour. But no, that was a different Preakness. The cool thing, too, is, and something I'm sure you appreciate, the collegiality between, say, a Bob Baffert and the coach, where even Baffert's like, good job. Like, that was great. Good for you. Especially when, that was the last year of the Baffert ban at the Derby, so he had to run in the Preakness to have a Classic win, for his owners, those kinds of things. So even for him, I'm sure disappointing to make the trip across the country and not have a winner in the Preakness, but he was so obviously happy for the coach.
I talked to Kenny Rice for NBC. His job right after that race was get the
Kentucky
winner.
So
he gets Lucas, and I was talking to him afterwards, and he said just to walk over, for the trophy with Lucas, every single person, other owners, they want to congratulate him. They want to shake his hand. He said he'd never seen so many happy losers in his life.
There you go. Steve Kornacki with us. This is the Horse Racing Happy Hour. Thanks for hanging out with us on a January 2nd, 2025 edition of the show. We are presented by Amwager. Again, 100% deposit match up to $150 going on right now. You need that edge, so go check out Amwager. So Steve, biggest disappointment of the year. We have this sound. So I'm lucky guy. I get to do a local sort of general show of sports, a lot of hoops and a lot of football here in the area in Louisville. And one of our favorite things to do is play old coaches sound. So you probably remember Jim Mora from the playoffs, that kind of thing. Well, our favorite sound of his was after a Saints game, actually, and his offense couldn't do diddly poo offensively. That's exactly right. So what was your diddly poo moment of the year? I will tell you mine. It's when Brad Cox faced the media at Churchill and said Idiomatic had to be retired. Right. And we didn't get the Adair Manor, Idiomatic, Torpedo, and a trio showdown in the distaff. It was going to set up to be just one of the great races probably that I've ever gotten to attend. To me, that was the disappointing moment, was when he said she had to stop racing, because frankly, I think we take for granted sometimes, like a horse like Flightline, he's obviously great. He races 6 times. Someone like an Idiomatic who just shows up every 5-6 weeks, puts in an honest effort every time. to lose a competitor like that in our sport is really disappointing. So for me, that was the old diddly poo moment of the year, if you will.
It's hard. I don't think anybody could argue with. I mean, when I was looking at this before the show, that was immediate top of my list too. So I agree with you. It's number one. The other one, it crossed my mind that I put out there. It wasn't as disappointing, but it was a disappointment, especially when I was looking back at some of these categories. In the juvenile, East Avenue, just
stumbling out of the gate. Gosh.
So right. I mean, just when I was looking, I'm like, that changes the whole view of the 2-year-old class. I mean, who knows what East Avenue actually is? And then, Baffert goes and wins it, but he gets the classic Baffert trip. He wasn't going to get that otherwise. So it just leaves a lot of question marks there, I think.
That's a really good one. Just that moment of him stumbling. Cause Steve, I'll be honest, like I had a pick 3 or something and he was my single and he stumbled and I went, well, there's that money. There we go. That's the end of that. So no, you're right about that. It's so interesting. Actually just changed the entire complexion of the 2-year-old Eclipse Award, right? I mean, frankly, if East Avenue finishes even second, you're probably having a debate about it even. So no, it's an interesting point that you bring up.
If he gets out there early, does it pace change? Does Chancellor McPatrick suddenly get it? I mean, it's a
lot there. No, you're absolutely correct about that. So yeah, just the trip out of the gate there. You mentioned earlier, and then we went sideways for about 6 minutes. Trainer of the year, and I will say this. I said it last week. By the numbers, purely by the numbers, the man I voted for last year should win it this year. His name is Chad Brown. He wins the most stakes. He is dedicated to turf racing east of the Rocky Mountains, etc. And he had the best on paper year. I voted for Kenny McPeak for all the reasons that we've talked about to this point. I also think sweeping Oaks 150, Derby 150, and Clark 150, Brian Hernandez Jr. becoming the first jockey since the 1890s to do that. Those kinds of stories resonate with me. So I ended up voting for Kenny McPeak. Totality of the award coming back in. What did you end up doing, Steve?
It's too much agreement here, but I did the same thing. And I look at the award a bit like Coach of the Year, in basketball or football or something, where my definition is sort of been who gets the most from the least. And I think when you sort of look at he just McPeak, it's no knock on him. He's not dealing with what Chad Brown or Todd Fletcher or all these other guys are dealing with, and I think he squeezed more out of what he had than anybody else out there. Some really unique special achievements this year. Obviously, marquee wins too, and putting together Oaks Derby. And again, we were talking about this with Torpedo Anna, but again, I think the way he handled the success, putting the horses out there. I just think that I think there's sort of an intangible that goes into an award like that too. I think one of these human awards, and I think he gets all those points too.
It was an interesting year for the guys who run their horses into shape rather than the guys who train their horses into shape. Because you mentioned it, Lucas wins the Preakness and wins the Pennsylvania Derby with Aziz the Gray, who won also the Pat Day Mile. Ran 9 or 10 times this year, goes and runs in that Breeders' Cup, mile. Doesn't work out for him, but whatever. And then you get McPeak, who, Torpedo Anna was on the track like 9 times this year. I mean, he's got her parade and she's ready to go again. So it's so clear he gets that mentality into his horses and different things. And it's nice when, the guy who's willing to fill the starting gate, for those of us who like to wager on the sport, right? The guy who's willing to fill the starting gate for the sport that we love, the more horses, the better for our wagers, that he would be the one who wins this award. So it's good. I think it's just good all around.
And I think the sport needs stories. We say it needs stars, and it needs stories. It needs, it needs horses who are going to be out there consistently enough where they don't show up and you're like, oh, I totally forgot about this horse who 5 months ago ran and we said was so dominant, or the horse wins a race and it's like, oh, okay, great. Now he needs 3 months of rest because God forbid he run a fourth race. I mean, I understand there's the big discussions, you could have about sort of the modern training philosophy, the state of the breed, those sorts of things. But just, it's a bit of a throwback. And I think it's anywhere you see it, just give it credit.
All right. So we've gone through Torpedo Anna and you have Sierra Leone, I assume, is your 3-year-old of the year. How difficult of a decision was that on the boys' side?
Yeah. It was between Sierra Leone and Fierceness. And, it's one of those. What I'm up against there quickly, though, is just like if you just tell me there's another race right now and Sierra Leone and Fierceness are in it, I'm probably going to want Fierceness. But so my mind was working for a way to get Fierceness, to number one.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. The combination of the Breeders' Cup head to head, and then they're both in the Derby, and
Right.
someone with a chance to win and someone with no show. I mean,
that's the other part of this too. I'm glad you said that. I think the Sierra Leone finishing, 15 spots ahead of him in the Derby, I think that matters. I'm with you on that for sure. He was part of. We don't get a great three-way finish without Sierra Leone, right? And so that's I think that matters for sure. I ended on our mutual appreciation of Seize the Great in third. Who did you land on in third?
Yes.
Are you agreeing with me again?
Gosh, should I pretend to vote for someone else here? Should I give you a bonus or something? I don't,
All right, so let's go to a category where we might have something different. Then let's do that. Let's be a little out there. Let's go to older dirt male, because you talked about an incomplete grade for a category. This has got to be it, Steve. I mean, this has got to be it. Who did you land on here, and why did you land on that horse?
I'm just going to preemptively say I fear we might actually have agreement here, unless you were more creative than me. But National Treasure.
Doggone it!
Who else?
I know. That's right.
Yeah.
No, he wins a grade one in the Pegasus. He goes overseas. He comes back, immediately wins the Met. Right, you win the Met Mile. I mean, that's a big boy race, right? And by the way, that's coming back off the Arabian Peninsula. Steve, I almost always bet horses to bounce coming off the Arabian Peninsula, right? And he comes back, he wins the race by 6.5 freaking lengths, by the way. And so, no, I'm with you. He finishes second in that California Crown to Subsanador. But how bad is the Subsanador loss when the horse comes back? Would have been one of the favorites in I don't know. I'm with you. National Treasure heads up on the top there. Who are your top three? This might be where we can have a different opinion here.
Yeah, and I mean, this was the category, and I said incompletes earlier, right? Right. This is, at various times this year, I thought I identified horses that might kind of take charge of the division. Skippy Longstocking was my, hope there for a little bit. King's Barnes before, things ended too soon for him. So where I ended up, Subsanador is where I landed for second.
Okay.
And I looked at Subsanador and Newgate, and the resumes are very, very similar. When Subsanador lost to Newgate, it was by a head, but it was in second. When Newgate lost to Subsanador, it was again by a head, but it was technically in third. That's literally, to me, the difference between those two horses. So I put Subsanador second, and I put Newgate third. Just a very, very flawed field, but it was for lack of seeing anything else that I could really make a strong case for. But maybe you can. Do we have some disagreement finally?
I went to post time second. And so here's where I'm at on post time. So this is an interesting conversation, actually. So Sheldon Russell rides here, right? So this is, for me at least, the Russell connection is interesting, number one. Number two, the horse runs in the Whitney, runs in the Met, hits the board in both, okay? Before that, of course, wins the Carter and wins the General George, okay? So the horse is traveling all up and down the eastern seaboard, and then runs a really good Cigar Mile after running an excellent Breeders' Cup Mile. And so while not a lot of wins on that resume, I just thought the fact that the horse ran 9 times this year and never missed the board, Steve, and we're talking about graded stakes up and down his resume, that to me stood out as, a horse that had a really, really good year, made almost $1 million. That to me was good enough for second place this year.
I thought about him a lot, and I've seen a lot of folks making the case for him. The reason I didn't, I said hitting the board, and that jumped out at me first, and then I caught myself and I said, well, a lot of these are pretty distant though. These weren't photo finishes. These were, that Met Miles.
Sure.
He held second by this much, 6 lengths behind, National Treasure, and, coming really to it's I think, you had me on for the Cigar Mile, and we were talking about him then. And I think I was where my mind was then, and the way that race unfolded didn't really change. It's a little too late. It always seems to be just kind of too late. He's fresh at the end of the race. He passes horses, but is he ever really a threat to win them? And he won. What did he? I think the one graded stake win he got was like a 4-horse field. So yeah, it's one of those. I've liked him a bunch of times in races. I've been curious, I should say, about him a bunch of times in races this year, and he never took to me that next step. But I get what you're saying. There's something to be said for it.
Older dirt female, I think, is one where we could definitely disagree. I brought up Idiomatic in her. By the way, I apologize. I have the worst head cold I've had. in a long time, Steve. I'm playing hurt today. You understand me? I should be on the injured reserve right now, but your boy is powering through. I'll probably take a nap after the show. But who did you land on for our older dirt female in this year?
Well, the way you set that up, and now if I'm remembering your show from last week, I think we did hit agreement here, even on something controversial.
Come on, Steve.
I went against Idiomatic and I went with Raging C, and I think that's what you did.
Oh, okay. Nope, that's not me. Okay, good. We got a disagreement. Tell me about Raging C. All right, how about that?
Okay, hey, good. Wait, who did you go with then?
Adair Manor.
Okay, yeah.
I have Raging C third. Whatever that's worth. Adair Manor, Idiomatic, Raging C third. Yeah.
So we're both
talk to us about Raging C. I don't hate this pick, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, went head to head twice with Idiomatic. Won once, lost another time. And if Idiomatic had, run in the distaff and won, it's a no-brainer to me.
I agree.
Finster win is obviously the strongest thing, is one of the strongest performances you're going to see, from any of them. But I just thought, look, you've got, let me pull out the exact thing I wrote down here, because I had a note for how I would describe this, which I am not finding here. So I'll have to talk it anyway.
That's all right.
I felt with Raging C that you ended up having a more complete. You had 4 wins out of 6 races. It was 3 out of 5 for Idiomatic. Idiomatic had 2 shots there. I think it was there to locked up the category with wins in grade ones. Didn't get. One of them was in the personal ensign, against Raging C. And so I thought it was a category that Idiomatic kind of left open for somebody else to take. And I thought Raging C went and took it. And I thought Adair Manor could have taken it too. Obviously, if Adair Manor had run in the distaff, I think you have a strong case for it there. But I liked the head-to-head. I liked that Raging C had actually gone there and beaten Idiomatic.
Yeah, I loved Adair Manor coming into that California Crown. They're going to run her there, then run her in that distaff, and it just obviously year-ending injury there. But I just thought the Beholder win. She goes to Oaklawn and runs in that Apple Blossom, wins by 5.5 lengths. That's super impressive to me. And so just I held those races up as the ones that I would care the most about. I thought Idiomatic, what you said is totally correct, which is just too many blown opportunities. Frankly, if she goes 5 for 5, we're not even having this conversation. I totally agree with you. And then, Raging C, I mean, I thought maybe her best race, the Beldame was very good, but I do think actually she was really good in the distaff. Just no one's touching it, Torpedo Anna, that day. It was just kind of a reminder of how much better Torpedo Anna was than the other fillies and mares in that class.
And that's the note. my asterisk on the distaff was, if you're gonna lose and your loss is to Torpedo Anna, and it's the race that that Idiomatic didn't run, I'm not gonna make that a big strike there.
Yeah, I think that's a totally reasonable thing. His name's Steve Kornacki. We are talking Eclipse ballots here on the Horse Racing Happy Hour. I'm Louie Rebel. Thanks for hanging out with us. Today, we just went over 1,100 viewers on this episode right now, which is very fun. So I appreciate people hanging out here. Let's get into some sprinters. And I kind of split this one up, Steve, because you know what? Actually, let's start here first. Male turf horse. We might actually disagree here. I landed on Johannes, and I just think he was easily the most consistent all year. I got a very thoughtful note from a listener to this show, making the case for more than looks in this case, and for might have been someone else. Let me find the note. It's actually in my inbox here. But I thought Johannes, just beginning to end, most consistent horse we had, just couldn't keep up with more than looks in the Breeders' Cup in that single race. Even in a race where we thought at the mile you might have like a Carl Spackler or something like that, he was very clearly the best American horse in that race, in that way to me, and just came back on opening day at Santa Anita, wins again in a grade 2. He was just the most consistent the whole year. The 3 runs for more than looks, just not enough for me, especially since he only won one of those. I know Cogburn set the world record for his sprint at Saratoga this year. I'm not mad if people vote for Cogburn. I just thought Johannes had the most consistent year.
We agree again.
Oh no!
I went Johannes. Well, it's one of those, you get a note with the ballot too that they strongly urge you not to submit your ballot until you watch the Boxing Day card at Santa Anita. I which I did, and that win in the San Gabriel, I think, just kind of put it over
He runs
the
the
top.
same race every time, Steve.
Yes.
Every single race is exactly the same. It's
Yes.
incredible.
And even when it's not, even when it doesn't look like his best performance, he still wins. So
That's right.
I thought, and then I more than looks on that performance in the Breeders' Cup. It's a great performance, but then you say, well, wait, Carl Spackler beat him twice before that.
Right.
So I ended up giving, I put Carl Spackler in second. Then I was thinking, is it, do you go more than looks in third? What do you do with Rebels Romance? We get into the whole conversation about, the overseas horses. I don't think one star.
Well, let's do that. Let's do that right now. Actually, is Rebels Romance running one race in North America good enough for you to give him a top 3 spot? It's not. For me.
It feels like a technicality. I mean, I'm not against top 3, like a third place under certain circumstances, but I'm certainly not giving the category if there's any way not to somebody who runs once.
Right. Okay. All right. So who did you end up in, Johannes? Who were your other 2?
Yeah, so I put Carl Spackler in second again, just the 2 wins over More Than Looks, and then I was between More Than Looks, Farbridge, or then Cogburn for the 3rd spot, and I went Cogburn, mainly on the straight, and I really agonized over it because the Breeders' Cup was such a disappointment. But I did put a lot into that Jaipur and into the dazzling performance there. Yeah,
the Jaipur was incredible. He shows up at Kentucky Downs, looks like it's Saratoga all over again. Like, it couldn't have been better. Steve, I've 2 things about that run in the Breeders' Cup. I've never seen a horse just stop like he did. I just stopped in person. I've never seen it. The second thing is that was back-to-back races with Torpedo Anna. And I got to tell you, Steve, I thought I was about to see the 2 best performances back-to-back I had ever seen back-to-back. Because if he just rips off what he was doing early in that race, he wins by 3-4 lengths, and she wins by 2.5, 3, and they never even shook the reins on her. That might have been the best 2 races I've ever seen, performances, I should say, back-to-back.
And you're talking about generational talent here. And,
yes, that's right.
It is. Instead, I'm agonizing over, do I put him on the ballot or not? Yeah,
right. It's incredible how quickly that changed that way. I made Cogburn my top male sprinter because of that. So I was able to put Johannes in this category and then put him in for male sprinter. Who did you land on?
I used Cogburn there. I put him in third.
Okay. Hey, look at us being different.
What's that now?
We're different. Look at that.
The conformity ends with
it's Cogburn. That's controversial. I love it.
And I don't have a great, this was another category where I struggled, and I don't feel too great about it, but I didn't feel great about anybody else. I went Mulliken, number 1 here. Didn't know what to do with with Straight No Chaser, because it's two great wins and then really nothing. So I put him second, and I put Cogburn third here, and I wanted to my heart really wanted to do something with the Chosen Vron, but
yeah, right. Yep, he was the tough one. I agree.
It is. It's like a sentimental pick, but lower level in some cases, state bred and a bit incomplete. Yes, right. So I couldn't do it.
Such a cool horse, though. I really do hope he's able to run next year, because he is cool. And it's nice, Steve. It's nice to have those horses in different parts of the country. So it's like, oh, it's 5:30. I guess I'll flip on some West Coast racing, and then boom, Joseph Rod's running in some state bred in race 5 or something. It's like, yes, Joseph Rod, let's go. So that's that always works out. I'd love to know, and I'm not trying to pick on the guy, but what percentage of Hector Berrios's career earnings are because of the Chosen Vron? And I'm not even picking on the guy. It's just the horse is so good. He's picking off 100K, state bred, races all the time. What a gift, right? If you can have that kind of horse in your barn, for sure. They bred him for $3,500, Steve.
No, it's a great story, and it's one of those wish it could have kept going, to the end of the year, and
I would have loved to have seen him in the Breeders' Cup. Yes, exactly. I agree, because he's good at Del Mar, man. So that could have been really, really fun, especially at the 6 furlongs there. A Jockey of the Year, we haven't gotten there yet. Lot made, of course. Flavien Prat breaks the graded stakes record, most total stakes as well. I don't think he quite got to the earnings, so he didn't get to pass that. I had to vote for Flavien Prat. I thought that one was pretty easy here, Steve. Did you vote for anybody else?
No, yeah, I went Flavien Prat, and then I just went, second place. I did put Brian Hernandez in there.
Okay.
Because I think that achievement of, both the achievement of like the Derby, the Oaks Derby double, but then also the way he won the Derby with the rail move, I think that was a jockey kind of winning a race too. So, I give him kind of extra credit there.
Who's your third?
And then I put Irad third.
Yeah, when Irad second, I went Tyler third. I thought he had an underrated good year before he got hurt in November at Churchill Downs, and so I put Tyler in the third spot there. I think Tyler is the most overlooked jockey in America. It's stunning to me that guy wins as many titles as he does riding, both in Florida, up here, of course, at Churchill, and Kentucky Downs. I mean, all kinds of places. I think he's a really, really underrated rider. So happy to put him in the third spot on my ballot. Steve Kornacki with us here on the Horse Racing Happy Hour. I want to remind you about our friends at AmWager. Man, online betting platform made by horse players for horse players. Speed, power, top tier features. Get in with them. Everything from a win bet to a pick 5, maybe a pick 6 even. AmWager.com. 100% deposit match up to $150 there. They'll be hanging out with us all the way through the Preakness this year. So there you go. Steve, is there a category we have not gotten to that we haven't done the 2-year-olds yet, have we? So let's talk about Brad Cox and why Immersive is the 2-year-old on the Philly side.
How can Immersive not be the 2-year-old?
Yeah, no, that was the easy one. Yeah.
I think the question here might have been for a lot of people: is Cox going to sweep the first, second, and third place votes for them? It didn't for me.
He did for me. I will be honest. I voted 1, 2, 3 Brad Cox here, but I don't think you think I'm crazy for doing that.
No, not at all. Right. I mean, he owns the trail, for the Oaks right now. And I wonder if you could just get that Brad Cox to win the Kentucky Oaks right now. What you might be able to get that at? I put Tenma in there.
Okay.
Just on a win in the Starlet, and but the Cox horses. I think if you asked me who the three, in my view, the 3 best 2-year-old, fillies are. I mean, I would go Cox, but just based on achievements, I put Tenma in there.
It's interesting that you went with Tenma because she did it was so interesting to watch her. They put her in that Oak Leaf, the grade 2 at Santa Anita, and she's up the track, nowhere to be found. She comes back in that Starlet, like you mentioned. And Kazushi Kimura, I think an underrated story actually is how comfortable he's gotten out west at Santa Anita. Multiple stakes wins over the last week in their opening week there, right after Christmas. And I got to be honest, I was thinking, why would you leave Woodbine when you've got all the great mounts up there and you're doing all this stuff? And now it's working. And so I need to shut up and tell them, hey, good job, good move. Because obviously I was way off on that one. Yeah, I went Immersive. I know I have Muhima third, Good Cheer second. Yeah, so there you go. For my very, very generic 2-year-old filly ballot here. Steve and I will spend the next half hour on steeplechase, but first, 2-year-old male of the year. Obviously, East Avenue trips out of the gate and probably cost himself the Eclipse Award here. I landed on Citizen Bull. Where did Steve land?
Yeah, it's. I mean, when does the Breeders' Cup champ not get the the 2-year-old award? And so, because I would have toyed with it if Chancellor McPatrick had been able to finish more competitively in the juvenile. I would have really toyed with putting him up in first there, but I couldn't get there. So yeah, I went Citizen Bull. I went Chancellor McPatrick. I put Journalism third. Okay. But that's basically on the strength of beating those 2 Baffert horses, in the Low South Futurity.
So who are your top 3? Do it again.
Yeah, so it's Citizen Bull, Chancellor McPatrick, Journalism.
If I gave you $100 to bet on one of those horses right now, 10-1 in the Kentucky Derby, which one would you take?
Probably Chancellor.
Okay, interesting. You're really high on him. I like
who would you take?
Probably Citizen Bull. I think Baffert's going to win the Derby this year.
Yeah.
I think he's going to win the Derby this year. I think he's going to have 3 starters, and I think he's going to win the Derby this year.
And he wins it the exact same way he won the juvenile, just goes to the front and actually gets
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, the old quarter horse trainer in Baffert comes back out, and you get the lead, and you keep the lead. That's exactly right. Yes, that's what you do.
It's just, yeah.
It's been working. So yeah, go back to what works for sure with him. Owner, breeder, did you go Godolphin?
Yeah, I had an ethical question on owner because I have with a small ownership stake through West Point, with the
okay.
I'll tell you who I would have if I voted in the category because I was looking at it, I would have given a vote. Not
did you abstain, Steve? That's actually, I think that's worth mentioning here. Did you abstain from the owner category because you have a stake? Okay, good for you.
Yeah. I would have given like a third place vote to My Racehorse. because I thought it was kind of a breakout year for them. So I would have given them a little bit of a nod.
Yeah, I thought the Godolphin breeder and I was talking with Matthew about this too, and I thought, I think it's so easy when outfits are doing well to just assume they have money or more resources than everyone else. I have to remind people all the time, Godolphin, as far as breeding starters, is actually way less starts than other, some of these other outfits. Actually, they're like third or fourth, and they still come up with this. So whoever's in their office sending these horses to the particular trainers, getting them in specific spots, is also doing a really good job. And so I would hate to think that there's a bunch of people busting their hump and everyone just goes, oh, well, yeah, he's Steve Kornacki. He works at NBC. Of course he does a good job. They got all the resources in the world. Well, no, Steve has memorized every county in this country. You understand me, people? And so, no, it's a different kind of thing. So I hope some of those Godolphin folks feel good when they do win the Eclipse Award for those things. So how long have you been a partial owner there, my friend? I didn't know this about you.
Yeah, no, it's the first horse I bought in on is going to start her 6-year-old season this winter. So Gallon Rush, a Clement trained turf horse. She got a grade 3 at Woodbine this summer.
Okay, is she at Gulfstream then?
She's down in Florida. I don't know exactly what the plan is yet, but Clement's got that winter headquarters down there. So
yes, he does. He's smarter than me. That's right. And then do you have a strong take on Apprentice Jockey?
Yeah, I gave it to I apologize if I get her name wrong because I've only ever seen her written, but Sophia Vives.
Okay, yeah.
Who's been up at Woodbine. She's no longer an apprentice. Yes. I went and actually looked at the calendar for when that ended. It was in August. But she had graded wins up there before August, and so I gave Eric Asmussen second, but I gave her first.
Yeah, I went with Gabriel Maldonado. I thought he's had a really, really nice season. Eric's in my group as well, and I think we'll. And I'll be honest, I think I held Eric's connection with the Asmussen family against him a little bit. I think he got better mounts than some of these other folks get as apprentice jocks, and so I held it against him a little bit. I've talked with many of the Asmussens on different programs, and they're great family. They've been great to me professionally, but I do think that you get different level mounts with different apprentices. So I gave Gabriel Maldonado a little bit of a push there, but I think Vivas is a good vote. I think you're right about, how quickly in the year she was able to shake the bug, right? I mean, that she was able to move into that. So that's an interesting one as well. And then, I think we've really covered most of these categories, my friend.
Did we?
What are you looking
for? I think that was one we didn't touch, did we?
Which one? Female sprinter?
Did we hit that one?
Oh, that is one that we might be different on. Go ahead. Who'd you land on?
Yeah, let me. Okay, right. Yeah, this is. Oh boy, this was a tough one. I went with Soul of an Angel.
Awesome. Okay.
And that's one where I think the Breeders' Cup win, did a lot of the work there. And then I went Ways and Means second with a note. I think if Ways and Means had been basically sprinting all year, I think Ways and Means would have won the category, but wasn't, so didn't. And I put Alva Star third with just, sort of, super impressive and obviously tragic circumstances. And I think, might have been a lot more.
Might have been very different. We went very different. I went Ways and Means first. I went AG Bullet second. Of all things, I thought her 4 wins this year were really impressive in lots of different spots. I thought she was an interesting winner of different races. I thought she showed up huge in the matriarch last out at Del Mar as well, going a mile. So trying different things. She was kind of all over the place, but in her sprint races in particular, she was very, very good in those. And then in third, I ended up on Emery. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that I saw her win twice. Sometimes that, that bias of watching horses do it and get it done probably happened to me between the Raven Run and the Leslie's Lady. I got to see her in both of those races at respectively Keeneland and Churchill. And I thought a good run, a good year for her. And because 4 out of 5, she's not she ran in that test. She ran a good second of Ways and Means. And that's I think a step above what she is as a horse. And so how you talked about the trainer who did the most with the least. I think Emery with her talent actually did the most with the least as far as a female sprinter this year.
That's not a bad pick. I mean, there were several here. I'm just looking back now. There are several here that I think.
Oh, this is an interesting category, actually. You're right. Yes.
Yeah. it's like what society. It's 3
Sure.
races. And it's just,
I
I,
know.
I
I
just
know.
wasn't enough there. Vava, what do you do with Vava?
Zeitlos was good, but not great, right? Yeah, she's a tough one.
Lightlo's
Yeah.
up there too. So there were, I was interested. I was very interested through at least the middle part of the year in Sela, but just sort of, I think
Yeah. So, yep.
didn't cross through. So yeah, it's one of those where it was almost by default, I think, where I landed on Soul of an Angel, and then watched her, come in second there in the Rampart last week. I said, I'm sure I want to do this, and I couldn't get myself anywhere else.
There you go. It is now time for our half-hour discussion of steeplechase horses. How do you decide who you're voting for steeplechase? The joke there, folks, if you're new to the program, is that most of us don't spend a lot of time watching steeplechase or handicapping it or whatever, but they ask us to vote on it every year. And I know many people who vote for this, Steve, who just abstain from it because they don't watch. I spend about 20 minutes watching replays of all these horses, and so going back and trying to figure out what I want to do. You mentioned a horse before we came on air in the steeplechase category. I landed actually on Snap Decision. I know you landed on L'Imperatore. And
no, I mentioned the name because that was fresh in my mind. I've Snap Decision.
Okay, you got it as well. Okay,
yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I thought that one was pretty easy. 3 wins this year, all of them in graded stakes, 2 of them in grade ones as well. So there you go. All right, what are you looking forward to in 2025, Stephen? I want to frame it this way, because I'm watching right now, and I'm the last person defending the college football playoff at this point. Everyone's already ready to throw it out because the games aren't close, and we've played 5 games ever in a 12-team playoff. And the Instagram era, if it's not perfect, we want a new thing. For years, Steve, the last decade or so, much of the conversation in the sport is about how if you're good at 3, we never see you again on the male side, especially. And now we get a bunch back, all the way from Mindframe to Sierra Leone to Fierceness to Mystic Dan to all these horses we talked about. We get them back next year. I asked Brooke Smith about this, and that interview again will drop tomorrow on this platform. Why did you decide to let this horse run? How much were you involved in the decision-making process? And essentially, it came down to them just deciding that it was best for the sport for this horse to run. It's an incredible thing to say. I mean, he laid it out that way. Financially, it doesn't make sense, frankly, is what they were saying, except that I think the trip to Saudi, if he wins, could make it worth it, that kind of thing. What are you most excited about? I think for me, it's a little bit of a restoration of those kinds of horses running as 4-year-olds. I mean, we forget Sierra Leone's dad is gun runner. He didn't do his best running until he was 4 or 5. And so I'm hoping I know you said it in passing and it wasn't a real statement, but that Sierra Leone does win again and actually starts to look like his dad a little bit more as he gets older.
I mean, I'm basically, that is my, optimism for 2025 too, is an older horse division. I was thinking about it, we're going to see Mystic Dan, and I know expectations are going to be, low coming out of, what we just saw at Santa Anita, but
that's a mistake, by the way.
I mean, it was a 7 furlong race. I mean, it's just, it's a sprint. So,
I know you're
but when is the last time we saw a real, like, 4-year-old or older campaign by a Derby winner? And I really think you got to go back to California Chrome. I mean, you had a couple races. Rich Strike maybe ran once, but I think really Chrome is the last one who had a full. I mean, it was really more at 5 and 6 too. But you really got to see that horse for a long time. Maybe we get something like that. Mystic Dan. We talked about it with. I mean, again, it's McPeak, Mystic Dan, and Torpedo Anna. But kind of in concert with what you're saying about it's good for the sport to have these older horses running. I think it's good to have them running and to have them trained by Ken McPeak, who again, you're not getting the let's wrap this horse in bubble wrap and we got our 3-race campaign plotted out here and that's it. I get the sense he's going to err on the side of running then, and is open. I guess is he going to go to the Middle East? I mean, I hope not, because just selfishly that they take so long. Might get more races in over here, but I think it's good to have him training those 2 horses. And I think just an active older horse division, and especially with the possibility of Torpedo Anna coming back and meeting those males, maybe at the end of the year for the Breeders' Cup, would make it extra enticing.
Yeah, the invitations are out for the Pegasus, and I can't remember. Did Mystic Dan get invited to that? Gosh, I would hope so. That just seems like such a
Yeah,
natural
how do those
next
work?
move for them.
Is this like they invite you if they know you're going to say yes, or are they just inviting you?
I'm sure there's a lot of
Right.
conversations with horses to make sure they don't look,
Yeah,
ridiculous.
This is like when you get
Hey,
asked to be
Sierra
vice
Leone, come on
president.
down. And he's like, or I
Yes,
could win for 20 million. Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, I got to imagine it's a little bit like that for sure. But yeah. All right. Well, he is Steve Kornacki. When's the next time you and I are gonna run into each other, you think? What's your sense of these things? When are we gonna, what races am I gonna see Steve Kornacki at this year? And by the way, I wanted to ask you this. I thought we could put a bow on the Eclipse Awards in 2024 this way. You just covered a very bizarre election where we had a former president who didn't win re-election, then win re-election, running against a person who didn't go through the full primary process. What's more strange, that or the Derby Oaks and Clark triple by McPeak and Fernandez Jr.? Which one? Because that was 1890 stuff. Which one is more strange? I think it might actually be the presidential election.
The presidential, actually, that will take you to the president who loses and reclaims the office is 1890s. We're kind of on par. Although, if you want the Trump, the non-consecutive winner of the presidency, is a bit of Rebels romance. The non-consecutive winner, so maybe that's more recent.
But just and then running against someone who didn't go through the primary process, that's really, I mean, in modern politics, super unusual, right?
Yeah, I mean, to the extent they had a modern primary process. 1968, Hubert Humphrey, no primaries, became the Democratic nominee, but there were like 15 primaries back then, and it was really because of that Humphrey thing that they created all these primaries so it wouldn't happen again. And yeah, no, this is I've been doing I've been doing elections now on air for 10 years, and I think every time now we say we've never seen one like this, and then we find something new we haven't seen. So
there it is. All right. Well, probably Derby then, Steve, is probably the next time I'll see you. I'm trying to get up to New York. I need to go to a prep at Aqueduct before they cut.
I'm up for the Gotham.
Yeah, that's what I need.
Get a rainy Saturday in the mud at Aqueduct. You're not going to have too many of those left at Aqueduct. Get them in while you can.
Will they let me walk on the tarp? I've always wanted to do that. I love that tarp at Aqueduct for some reason. Everybody's got the weird thing in horse racing they love. I just want to walk on the tarp at Aqueduct one time. Just before you do anything here.
There are something, what I miss about Aqueduct is the start of those sprint races in the fall. There's a couple of trees right by the gate. And beautiful fall foliage. It's the only foliage you'll see at Aqueduct or at Ozone Park, Queens. But it's great on TV.
It's fantastic stuff. All right. Well, he's Steve Kornacki. We'll let him get out of here on the Horse Racing Happy Hour. Thank you, Steve. Happy New Year, buddy. And I'm sure we will be seeing you soon. So is that the February prep? Is that what you're suggesting I make it up for?
Is it weird, or they usually do like the Withers, then they cut back to the Gotham, like in March, I think.
I know, dude. It's
weird. They go mile and 1/8 and they cut back to a mile.
Yes, it is. Yeah, because they have the race this weekend. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah. No. And we got this weekend. We got the Jerome, right?
Yeah. So the Jerome is this weekend, and then the Withers is February 1st. Okay, got it. Okay. You know what, Steve? I'm going to do my damnedest to be there on February 1st. That's what we're going to do.
All right. If you're there, I'm going to do my damnedest to be there.
A little Aqueduct time with Steve Kornacki.
We're both going to be there. We say, why the hell are we here?
Yeah. Right. Oh, look at this 6-horse field. There you go. All right. Well, he's Steve Kornacki. We'll let him get on here. Steve, appreciate you, buddy. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Take care.
All right. There you go. Steve Kornacki here on the Horse Racing Happy Hour. Appreciate him again, hanging out with AmWager through the Preakness at least. So get the AmWager edge. Deposit match up to $150, dollar for dollar. Right now, you need that edge, and you need AmWager. Thanks for hanging out this week on the Horse Racing Happy Hour. We'll be getting more and more into the Derby preps as we move along, so make sure that you are here for all of it. I'm Louie Rabeau at Radio Louie. The show is at Horse Happy Hour if you want to find us there. We'll talk to you next week.